even the few remaining nations that don't clearly fit the definition of a capitalist economy, and even those that have developed a national identity opposed to capitalism, have either willingly or reluctantly adopted many of its characteristics. However, is Germany's transition to a global capitalist economy inevitable? Almost every country in the world today operates its economy through some form of capitalism. Given that capitalism as we know it today really only began to take shape with the Industrial Revolution, it's easy to conclude that this is the best course of action when comparing the evolution of capitalism and the global economy over the same period, and that the optimum economic system was developed and dispersed over the world by natural selection. People who are against capitalism will point to rising inequality, the exploitation of natural resources, and the erosion of human rights in the name of maximizing output as equally important drawbacks. These are the benefits of capitalism that have made our civilizations thousands of times wealthier than they were centuries before capital development, innovation, the drive to work harder, and the efficiency of the free market. Unfortunately, because of these conflicting ideologies, supporting or opposing the world's dominant economic system is seen more as something to align with than as something that can be optimized, much like how capitalism and socialism are rival sports teams that can only be won by one side. This kind of emotional support for one economic system over another is not only counterproductive, but also foolish. It's as absurd as, say, a mechanic choosing a hammer as their preferred tool and then attempting to fix a car without even taking into account that a socket wrench would be the superior tool for a given job. Similarly, in order to understand capitalism and perhaps create a more comprehensive understanding of this economic tool, we must constantly provide straightforward answers to a few basic questions. For instance, what is capitalism? Most individuals who are fervently advocating for or against it probably don't even understand this part. Why has capitalism grown to be so powerful in the contemporary global economy, and are there better alternatives? One of the biggest issues in addressing the strengths, weaknesses, and subsequent inevitability of capitalism is that, unfortunately, there's no universally agreed upon definition of capitalism. A big reason for that is simply the tribalism that evolves around economic systems like this, where one side will attribute everything good to capitalism, while the other side will only attribute the bad stuff. In the end, whether intentional or not, it all just gets a bit too messy to put a hard and fast definition to it. That being said, by taking a step back and understanding what capitalism is supposed to achieve, we can get a more well-rounded idea of what it is than, honestly, most professional economists have. Socialism, capitalism, communism, and even anarchy are all attempts to address the fundamentally unsolvable problem of economics. We live in a finite world, but because humans have limitless desires, decisions must be made about what is produced with those limited resources, how it's made, and by whom. Capitalism attempts to address this issue by incentivizing people to produce more goods more efficiently by rewarding those who make the largest contributions with a larger share of resources. Of course, this doesn't always work as well in reality as it sounds in theory, but we'll get to that shortly. For the time being, capitalism is merely an economic tool to address the main economic issue, much like a socket wrench is a tool to address the issue of a securely fastened nut. The characteristics of capitalism's tool include divergent opinions from politicians, economists, and even common people, but there are also some fundamental aspects that nearly everyone agrees upon, as well as some that may surprise you at first. Free markets, free trade, and even concepts like money are by no means exclusive to capitalism. In fact, they all existed long before capitalism did, and because of their continued effectiveness in addressing some of the most important economic issues that continue to be elements of other economic systems like socialism. A free market allows people to make their own decisions about what they want by spending their money on the things that they value most, as opposed to a government or other entity deciding who gets what based on arbitrary rules. This will in turn tell producers what to produce more of and what to produce less of, allowing the economy to allocate its limited resources more efficiently towards what people actually want. The primary characteristic of capitalism as an economic system is the existence of open markets for private capital ownership, hence the name. By definition, capital is anything that facilitates an economy's ability to produce more goods, such as machinery, factories, infrastructure, and technology. The world has become as wealthy over the past 250 years since the start of the Industrial Revolution thanks to the development and improvement of capital, which has produced things like steam engines, modern production lines, and instant communication. This is the generation of riches and production at a scale never seen before in human history. The concept behind capitalism is that because these tools and technologies are private, there's an incentive for an economic participant to innovate or improve upon already existing capital in order to benefit from the additional wealth they help create. Those who don't currently have enough resources to innovate or improve capital can look for investors who have excess capital that they don't yet put to better use. These investors can then determine whether the idea is good enough to invest their resources in exchange for a share of the ownership of the improved capital. The majority of the time, investors' resources for new ideas simply take the form of money, which is a highly liquid way for resources to be accounted for and transacted in any economy, not just a capitalist one. It's important to note, though, that investments in new capital development don't always have to take the form of money. For example, the company behind ChatGPT received billions of dollars in investment from Microsoft, most of which came in the form of Microsoft allowing them to use their servers to run their AI programs. In this instance, Microsoft, the investor, had extra funds and a spare server space that it could provide to a business looking to enhance artificial intelligence in capital markets, and its potential to boost wealth generation will reward Microsoft for providing those resources with a return on their investment through this investment system and incentive. Capitalism is made possible by innovation, which increases its efficiency in addressing both the what and how of production. Now, this is different from the previous economic systems in which the ruling class possessed the majority of the capital, making it difficult for people to improve tools and technology because they wouldn't benefit from it. Additionally, it was difficult to draw an investment because unless the potential investor were a member of the ruling class, they would find it difficult to receive a return on their investment before it was simply claimed by some lord whose land it was developed on. Consequently, property rights safeguard the ownership that individuals assert. Another important aspect of capitalism is capital, both intellectual and physical. Suppose people are rewarded for increasing an economy's production, or at the very least, for providing resources to those who increase an economy's production. In that case, an economy will naturally produce more, meaning that even regular people who aren't innovators or investors will have more wealth and access to resources than they would if these incentives hadn't been put in place. People in most countries around the world today, especially advanced economies, enjoy access to more goods and services than even kings from a few hundred years ago because there's so much more to go around now. Of course, the benefits of this system have lifted everybody. Economists call this the rising tide that lifts all boats, but it has lifted some people a lot further than others, which is only the beginning of the system's serious problems. The economy didn't produce goods and services on nearly the scale we do today, and most people at the time dedicated most of their efforts to just making enough food to eat. Since capital and land can be used to generate profits that can be used to acquire even more capital and land, it's very easy for these factors of production to become highly concentrated in the hands of a small number of people. However, labor is inherently limited to the amount of work that one person can accomplish, so it is by nature far more distributed among all economic participants in an economy. This creates a problem because it's much easier to coordinate a small number of enormous amounts of capital and land than a vast number of individual labor units. Due to the fact that businesses are financially motivated to pay as little as possible, workers are the factor of production, actual breathing humans, and must therefore take action to protect land and capital from those who would profit from their acquisition. Since the protection of land and capital ownership is one of capitalism's tenets, taking such drastic measures would amount to a rejection of the system as a whole. However, in actuality, capitalism is a very effective tool that has unquestionably done some amazing good for the world. What do you think of this? Do you support capitalism? Let us know in the comments down below. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.